Today is Thursday, Parashat Tetze. One of the mitzvot of the parasha of this week tells us that we're not allowed to plow a field with a donkey and an ox together. Lo tachrosh be'shor v'chamor yachdav. Don't plow a field with an ox and a donkey pulling together the plowing tool. By the way, the same thing applies also pulling a carriage. You have either horses together or donkeys together, but not a donkey and an ox, two different species pulling the cart together. The carriage or the plowing tool is something that is asur. And you know what? It makes total sense from a perspective, even logically. The idea of two different species that have each a different strength, an ox and a donkey would pull differently and would cause the one who's not able to catch up to suffer. There is another reason that is brought by our sages, is that the ox ruminates, it chews its cud, and the donkey doesn't do that. And the donkey might see the other animal sort of chewing on food, and him not being fed would say, that's not fair. He's being fed and I'm not. There would be a type of jealousy situation. Even with animals, we have to be very careful with what pain we could inflict on them or desire for eating when they see the other animal next to them eating. But even without these reasons, there is divine wisdom in the Torah. And if the Torah tells us, don't do it, we have to follow it, even if we didn't have specific reasons why not. And this idea of Kil'ayim, of two different species together, we of course cannot mate two different species together to have them in the same enclosure for them to mate when they're from different species. That's another mitzvah in another place of the Torah. But there is another aspect of Kil'ayim in this parasha, and that's not to wear clothes that combine wool and linen. So if you were to buy a suit that is made of 100% wool, you would have to check that the lining or certain parts of the belt area or the collar, that they don't include any linen, because any combination of linen and wool together is not allowed to have in clothing that you wear. But not just clothing, even let's say a sofa that's made of material, since when you sit on it, you sort of like have some of the material around the sides of your around your sides, and that could be something that would be considered also as clothing going on you. And the cloth, if it has a combination of wool and linen, it would not be allowed to use then in that fashion. This idea of why? Because the Torah said so, even if we don't understand the reasons. I heard once an explanation given by Rabbi Eli Mansour, where he mentions that the wool and the linen are reminiscent of the first jealousy murder in the world. That's when Cain and Hevel, the two brothers, the sons of Adam Arishon, brought offerings to Hashem. Hevel brought sheep with, I guess, that had beautiful wool on them, so that's where we get the idea of wool. And Cain brought some plants of flax plants, some linen plants, and that was his offering. When Hashem responded favorably to the offering of Hevel, Cain was jealous and he killed his brother. So this combination of wool and linen is reminiscent of that unfortunate time, and we don't want to bring it up to the surface again, so that's why we don't wear them together. But again, it's a mitzvah of the Torah with no explanation. There are divine reasons beyond our understanding. What I just explained now, that I heard from Rabbi Mansour, is an interpretation that would light some light on one certain aspect of a reason, quote unquote, behind it. But even if we didn't know the reason, the Torah says so, we follow the mitzvot, just like it says, Na'aseh v'nishma, when they receive the Torah, which means we'll fulfill the commandments, we'll follow them, v'nishma, and then we'll hear, we'll understand, but it's not a prerequisite for us to follow what Hashem commands us in His Torah. So these were two mitzvot in the parasha of this week: not to plow or pull a carriage with an ox and a donkey together, and not to wear linen and wool in the same garment. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.